If you believe in the twists of fate, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Your inspiring journey starts now. The silence of the apartment was a living thing, heavy and suffocating. It pressed in on mile thick, with the ghosts of shouted words and a slammed door that, weeks later, still seems to echo. The absence of her husband Mark was more than just an empty space on the other side of the bed. It was a cold void that had sucked all the air, color, and most terrifyingly, all the money from their small suburban condo. He had left on a Tuesday, claiming he was going to a job interview 2 states over. "A new start for us, babe," he'd said, kissing her forehead. He'd packed a duffel bag, filled the tank of their aging sedan, and driven away. The first week, his texts were sporadic. "It's looking good, just networking." By the second week, the texts were one-word replies. By the third, her messages turned a stark, unanswered green. The joint bank account which he had managed was a flat line, 0. Now there was only Maya, Ethan, Sophia, and Leo. Ethan, at 11, had built a fortress of angry silence around himself. He understood, gone better than his siblings. Sophia, 7, had retreated into her drawings, her crayons documenting a world of sad stick figures under grey scribbled skies. And Leo, at 4, was a bundle of confused energy, his little boy radar picking up the static of his mother's fear, making him clingy and prone to sudden, inexplicable tears. This afternoon, the fear had crystallized into something sharp and immediate. It was 4:30 p.m. The children's stomachs were beginning to rumble. Leo padded into the kitchen, his tiny hand gripping the hem of Maya's worn t-shirt. "Mummy, I'm hungry. Can we have mac and cheese?" Maya's breath hitched. "Let's see, sweetie." She forced a smile that felt like cracking porcelain and pulled open the refrigerator door. The weak yellow light inside illuminated a wasteland, a half-empty carton of milk already past its expiration date, a single rubbery carrot, a jar of mustard with a crusty ring round the limb, and half an onion, weeping in a plastic bag. Her eyes scanned the shelves, desperate for a miracle, for something she might have missed. Nothing. She closed the door, her heart hammering against her ribs. "How about ... How about pasta?" she offered, her voice tight. The pantry was just as grim. A box of spaghetti, maybe a third full, a can of green beans, its label peeling, a single packet of oatmeal, but no sauce, no butter, no oil, nothing to turn dry pasta into a meal. There was no food. The thought hit her with the physical force of a slap. This wasn't, "We're running low," or "We need to go shopping." This was the end. The last of the cash she'd had was gone, spent on gas for the school run and a loaf of bread that was now just crumbs. The utility bill on the counter screamed final notice. She sank into a kitchen chair, the linoleum cold beneath her bare feet. She couldn't breathe. She was failing them. Mark hadn't just left her. He had stranded her on a desert island with 3 small, trusting people, and the tide was coming in. "Mum?" Ethan stood in the doorway, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He was too thin, his face all sharp angles and worried eyes, a miniature man shouldering a burden that wasn't his. He didn't ask about food. He knew. "I'm just thinking, honey," Maya whispered, trying to shield her face. "I found this," he said. His voice was low, as if sharing a secret. He walked over and unzipped the small front pocket of his backpack. He reached inside and pulled out a small, crumpled napkin. Carefully, he unfolded it on the table. Inside were 2 $1 bills and a handful of coins, maybe 75 cents. "It's from lunch," he mumbled, staring at the table. "I wasn't hungry." Maya looked at the small pile of money, then at her son. He wasn't hungry. He'd been skipping his school lunch, saving the meager allowance she'd given him weeks ago, dollar by dollar. He had seen this day coming before she had allowed herself to. A sob, hot and violent, tore through her. She pulled him into her arms, burying her face in his hair, which still smelled faintly of playground dirt and pencil shavings. "Oh, Ethan," she cried, "you shouldn't have. You have to eat, you eat." He mumbled into her shoulder, his arms wrapped tight around her waist. "I'm okay." She held him for a long moment, drawing strength from his small, rigid spine. He was trying to save them. Now it was her turn. She pulled back, wiping her face with the back of her hand. She stared at the money. $2.75. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for a box of cereal. It wasn't enough for milk and eggs. It was, perhaps, enough for 2 boxes of off-brand mac and cheese. But she'd have to walk the 2 miles to the dollar store, and by then it would be dark. "I'll be right back," she said, her voice hoarse. "Stay with Sophia and Leal. Don't open the door." "Where are you going?" Ethan asked, his eyes filled with a new dread. I'm going to the store to get dinner." She scooped the money into her Zhang pocket, the coins cold against her thigh. She grabbed her keys and walked out, the click of the deadbolt locking behind her, feeling terrifyingly final. The October air was crisp, and the setting sun painted the sky in brutal shades of orange and purple. She walked past her building, past the small park where she used to push Lear on the swings, past the corner store where her debit card had been declined just yesterday. She kept walking, her feet moving with a grim, magnetic pull. She found herself standing in front of the small, dingy gas station at the edge of the highway access road. The Payless gas sign was missing a P. This was it. This was the last place she had seen Mark. She'd watched him from the living room window as he filled the tank, his back to the apartment. He'd gone inside, bought a coffee, and then, without a single look back, he'd merged into traffic and vanished from her life. The memory was so painful, she almost turned around. But the bell above the door jingled, and a man inside looked up. It was Sam, the elderly cashier, a man with a face like a worn leather map and kind, watery eyes. He'd worked here for as long as she could remember. Maya pushed the door open. The smell of stale coffee and cheap air freshener hit her. She walked past the aisles of overpriced chips and candy, her stomach aching. She went to the refrigerated section, her mission clear. Milk. If she could just buy a small container of milk, she could make the oatmeal packet for Leo. The price tag on a quart of milk read $2.89. She was 14 cents short. Tears blurred her vision. She stood there, staring at the price, the humiliation of physical weight. 14 cents. She was failing her children for 14 cents. She turned to leave, her face burning. As she passed the counter, Sam cleared his throat. "Tough day, huh, dear?" Maya could only nod, the lump in her throat too big to speak. Her hand was still in her pocket, clutching the crumpled bills and coins. Sam's gaze drifted from her face to the bright, garish lottery display behind him. The Mega Millions jackpot was $150 million, a number so large it felt like a fantasy. A cruel joke in the face of her 14-cent defeat. "You know," Sam said quietly, polishing a glass display case with a gray rag, "sometimes you just gotta let the universe decide." Maya looked at him, then at the sign. It was absurd. Gambling was for people who had money to lose. She had nothing. But then, she looked at the $2.75 in her hand. It wasn't enough. It was useless. It couldn't buy her milk, it couldn't buy her bread. It was, effectively, just paper. On a desperate, wild impulse that felt more like a surrender than a choice, she walked to the counter. She smoothed the $2 bills onto the worn laminate and pushed them forward, keeping the coins. One quick pick, please," she whispered. Sam didn't judge. He didn't smile. He simply nodded, his fingers tapping the keys. The machine whirred and spat out a small, flimsy piece of paper. He handed it to her. "Good luck, dear," he said. "I mean that." Maya clutched the ticket. It felt both worthless and impossibly heavy. It was the physical representation of her last $2, a monument to her failure as a provider. She walked home in the deepening dusk, the ticket burning a hole in her pocket. When she returned, 3 small faces looked up at her, their eyes wide with a hope that shattered her heart. "What's for dinner, Mammy?" Leo asked, his voice bright. Maya took a deep breath. "We're going to have a special pioneer dinner," she said, forcing a cheerfulness that felt like acid. "We're going to have pasta with a special red sauce." She boiled the handful of spaghetti. In another small pot, she heated the last of the milk, the expired milk, praying it wouldn't make them sick. She stirred in the single packet of oatmeal. This would be for Leo. For Ethan and Sophia, she took the can of green beans, rinsed them, and mixed them with the pasta. The special red sauce was a concoction of ketchup packets she found in the back of a drawer, watered down and heated. They ate at the small kitchen table. Sophia and Leo ate without complaint. Ethan just pushed the pasta around his plate, his jaw set. Later, after she had tucked them into their shared bed, Sophia and Leo in one, Ethan on the mattress on the floor, Maya sat alone at the kitchen table. The silence had returned, deeper and more menacing than before. She put her head in her hands, and, for the first time since Mark had driven away, she wept. She wept for the hunger, for the betrayal, and for the terrifying, gaping emptiness of the future. She cried until her body ached, and her eyes were swollen shut. She fumbled in her pocket for a tissue she knew wasn't there, and her fingers brushed against the lottery ticket. She pulled it out, a flimsy scrap of paper, a $2 joke. With a sigh of utter exhaustion, she tossed it onto the kitchen counter, next to the final notice bill. She didn't even look at the numbers. It was a symbol of her desperation, and she didn't want to look at it. She turned off the light and went to the sofa, collapsing into a sleep that was less like rest and more like a temporary death. Maya woke with a gasp, the thin arm of the sofa digging into her neck. For a disorienting second, she was back in the moment of panic, the empty fridge, the hollow-eyed stare of her children. The same icy dread settled in her stomach. It was morning. Nothing had changed. The hunger was still there, a dull ache beneath her ribs. The apartment was cold. The final notice on the counter was still red. She pushed herself up, her body aching from the cramped, unrestful sleep. In the bedroom, the children were huddled together. Ethan, already awake, watching his siblings breathe. He gave her a look that was part question, part resignation. "Good morning, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice rough. Let's get you ready for school." The routine felt like a cruel joke. She helped Leo and Sophia get dressed in clean, if not warm, clothes. She washed her face with cold water, avoiding her reflection in the cracked mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger, a gaunt, terrified creature with haunted eyes. She had nothing to offer them. No breakfast, no comforting words that weren't a lie. She walked Ethan to the door. "Have a good day," she said, the words tasting like ash. "I'll figure something out for dinner, I promise." Ethan just nodded, his small shoulders slumped, and walked down the hall toward the bus stop, taking with him the last flicker of normalcy in their lives. Back in the kitchen, the silence pressed in again. Sophia was drawing at the table another picture of their family, but this time the stick figure of her father was scribbled out with angry black crayon. Leo was pushing a small, wheel-less toy car across the floor, making vroom sounds that were heartbreaking in their innocence. Maya went to the sink to get a glass of water, her stomach cramping. Her eyes landed on the counter. The lottery ticket. It lay there, a flimsy, white and blue reminder of her too-dull act of magical thinking. What a fool. What a desperate, pathetic fool. She'd spent the last of her son's saved lunch money he had starved himself to save on a fantasy. Anger, sharp and hot, surged through her. She snatched the ticket, her knuckles white. She was going to rip it into 1,000 pieces, this symbol of her ultimate failure. But her phone, lying screen down on the counter, buzzed, a low battery warning. 2%. She stared at it. The phone still had a connection to the world, a world where numbers were drawn, and lives, allegedly, were changed. It was the final flickering ember of an insane what-if. Just look, just see the loss, make it final. Then you can ... then you can figure something else out. Her fingers, still trembling from the cold and the adrenaline, fumbled with the phone. She opened the web browser. The state lottery homepage took an eternity to load, each pixel materializing in slow motion. The battery icon flashed red. 1%. The winning numbers for last night's Mega Millions draw finally appeared at the top of the screen. 14223856661 MB 19. She held the ticket up, her breath held tight in her chest. She read the single line of numbers Sam's quick pick machine had spat out for her. 14223856661 MB 19. Maya read the screen. Then the ticket. Green, the ticket. The numbers didn't move. They stared back at her, identical, unblinking. It was a mistake. Her eyes were playing tricks on her. This was a cruel hallucination brought on by hunger and stress. She must have typed in the numbers from her ticket, not the winning numbers. She refreshed the page. The phone screen went black. The battery was dead. No. A raw, keening sound escaped her throat. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real. She grabbed the ticket. She grabbed her keys. Sophia, watch Leo. I'll be right back. Lock the door. Do not open it. She didn't wait for an answer. She sprinted out of the apartment, down the stairs, and into the cold morning air. She ran. She ran the entire way to the Payless gas station, the ticket clutched in her fist, her lungs burning. She burst through the door, the bell jangling wildly. Sam was there, wiping down the coffee machine. He looked up, startled by her wild-eyed, breathless entrance. Maya? You all right? He couldn't form words. She just leaned against the counter, gasping, and held out the crumpled ticket. Her hand was shaking so violently she could barely keep it straight. Sam's kind expression deepened with concern. What is it, dear? He took the ticket from her, his brow furrowed. He walked over to the lottery terminal, checking a ticket. Maya just nodded, her eyes fixed on the back of his head. He scanned the barcode. The terminal, usually silent or emitting a low beep for a non-winner, suddenly erupted in a sound she had never heard before. A loud, repetitive, cheerful chirp, chirp, chirp. The small digital screen flashed a message. Big winner pay at Lottery HQ. Sam froze. He stared at the screen. He looked at Maya. He looked back at the screen. Then, very slowly, he scanned the ticket again. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Oh my lord, Sam whispered. He took off his glasses and wiped them on his vest. He turned to Maya, his face pale. Maya, what were the numbers last night? I don't know, she whispered, the words choking her. My phone died. I think... Sam grabbed the morning paper from the rack and flipped to the back page. He read the numbers aloud, his voice shaking. 14, 22, 38, 56, 61. Megaball 19. He looked at her ticket, then at her. His eyes filled with tears. You got him all, dear, he said, his voice cracking. You hit the jackpot. Maya's legs gave out. She didn't faint. She simply folded, sliding down the front of the counter to sit on the grimy floor. The sound that came out of her was not a cry of joy. It was a wrenching, agonizing sob of release, the sound of years of terror, betrayal, and inadequacy finally breaking free. Sam was beside her in an instant. It's okay, dear. It's okay. You're safe. He fumbled in his pocket and handed her a pen. The back. Sign the back of it. Right now. She signed her name, her signature a jagged, unreadable scrawl. It was done. The next 2 weeks were a disorienting dream. Sam had closed the store for an hour, sat her down in the back office with a bottle of water, and helped her make the first call. He gave her the name of a local lawyer, a no-nonsense woman who specialized in sudden money, and who, true to Sam's word, treated Maya not as a client, but as a person in shock. They chose the lump sum payment. $150 million was the annuity amount. The cash payout was $88.5 million. After federal and state taxes, an incomprehensible number would be wired into a new, secure account. Maya told no one. She lived in a state of suspended animation, going through the motions. She went to a food bank, her face burning with shame, to get enough food to last until the money cleared. The secret was a crushing, impossible weight. The day the money arrived, Maya sat at her kitchen table, logged into the new bank's website, and saw the number, $59,200,000. She stared at it for 10 solid minutes. Then she took a deep breath, picked up her phone, and made 3 calls. The first was to the utility company. She paid the bill. The second was to her landlord. She paid the rent. The third was to Ethan's school, reporting him absent. She gathered her children. "We are going on an adventure," she said, her voice steadier than it had been in years. She took them to a local diner, the one with the bright neon sign they'd only ever passed by. They slid into a red vinyl booth. The waitress, a woman with a tired smile, handed them menus. "Mummy, what can we get?" Sophia asked, her eyes wide. Maya looked at her 3 children, Aten's wary skepticism, Sophia's hesitant hope, and Leo's simple, happy ignorance. "Anything you want," Maya said, her voice thick. "Order anything you want." Ethan looked at her, searching her face for the catch. Even the lumberjack slam, with extra bacon." Maya smiled, the first real smile in months, "and a chocolate milkshake." Watching Leo devour a stack of strawberry pancakes, his face a sticky, joyous mess, was the moment the numbers in the bank account became real. It wasn't about the millions. It was about this. It was about pancakes. They didn't stay in the condo. The ghosts there were too strong. Within a month, Maya had bought a house. It wasn't a sprawling mansion. It was a solid, beautiful, 4-bedroom home on a quiet, tree-lined street in a good school district. It had a fenced-in backyard. The kitchen was bright and warm, and the refrigerator was a double-door stainless steel model that she immediately filled and kept full until every shelf and drawer was overflowing. She bought a safe, reliable minivan. She set up ironclad college trust funds for all 3 children. She paid off the small debts of her parents, who lived 2 states away. And then she simply was. The fear, she learnt, didn't vanish with the money. It had etched pathways in her brain. For the first 6 months, she'd wake up in a cold sweat, her heart racing, convinced the fridge was empty and the power was off. She'd tiptoe to the kitchen and open the refrigerator, the automatic light flooding the room, illuminating rows of milk, juice, eggs, fruit, and cheese. It took time, but the fear was slowly replaced by something new, peace. She watched her children blossom. Ethan joined the school's soccer team and started to smile again, the angry pinch between his brows smoothing out. Sophia started taking art classes, her drawings now bursting with color-bright yellow suns, green trees, and a house where all the stick figures were holding hands. Leo was just happy, a 4-year-old in a safe world, which was all he'd ever needed to be. Mark never resurfaced. His name was a fading scar. One crisp autumn afternoon, almost exactly a year later, Maya stood in her new kitchen. The smell of roasting chicken and rosemary filled the air. Ethan was at the island doing homework, Sophia was drawing, and Leo was building a tower with blocks. They were laughing. They were healthy. They were safe. Maya looked at them, her heart so full it ached. The $2 ticket hadn't been a miracle. It had been a tool. It hadn't saved her soul, but it had saved her life. It had bought her freedom from fear. The greatest luxury the money had afforded her was the absolute, unshakable certainty that she could feed her children. She was no longer the woman who was left with nothing. She was Maya, and she was, finally, more than enough. True luck isn't holding the winning ticket. It's having a reason to buy it. For Maya, $2 of desperation became the foundation for a new life. The money didn't erase the pain of betrayal, but it gave her a powerful tool: freedom. The lesson wasn't about the wealth money can buy, but the security it can build. Maya's greatest victory wasn't the jackpot. It was the ability to look at her children and know for the first time that everything would be okay, because she was enough. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more true stories of hope.